It's that time of season where we are starting to hopefully reap the fruits of our labor in the garden, plant friends. For you outdoor growers, I hope you are enjoying an abundance of delightful fruits and vegetables and herbs from your gardens and making all sorts of delicious meals for yourself, your family, and your friends. If you're like me, you find that you might go back to similar recipes, right? For me, it's my husband's pesto. It's making sandwiches with his sourdough and my homegrown tomatoes and also pickling stuff. But the old recipes get old quickly, right, plant friends? Part of the fun of growing your own food is finding new and fun ways to cook with the abundance that you have. I mean, I might argue I could eat pesto every day for the rest of my life, but realistically, I probably shouldn't. I should probably find other things to eat with the basil and herbs I grow from my garden. And today's episode is all about inspiring you to spice up your garden harvest with some recipes you might have never heard of before. Welcome to the Growing Joy with Plants podcast, where we not only learn how to care for plants successfully, but how to simply and affordably use our plant babies to cultivate more joy in our lives by doing so. I'm Maria, former plant killer turned happy plant lady, author of Growing Joy, the Plant Lover's Guide to Cultivating Happiness, speaker, podcaster, and most importantly, your new best plant friend. On Growing Joy with Plants, you'll find conversations about houseplant care, gardening tutorials, and wellness through the lens of plants. Plant care is self-care on Growing Joy. Hello, plant friends. Welcome back. I'm so happy you are spending the hour with me today talking about fun recipes that we can use on our cucumbers, tomatoes, and herbs. So for this episode, we're honing in on cucumbers, tomatoes, and herbs because I feel like that tends to be like what we have a plethora of at this time in the middle of the gardening seasons. Like everybody plants so many tomato plants at the beginning of the year, and then all of a sudden they're like paying people to take tomatoes off of their hands. But no fear, because we have an awesome episode today with Julia from Lemon Stripes. She's an author of a cookbook specifically for gardeners. It's going to be great. Before we dive into this episode, I just wanted to say, welcome back. If you're a repeating listener, it means so much to me that you join me here. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Maria. I am the host of the podcast. I'm here to help you care for plants successfully and grow joy in your life by doing so. And today's episode is certainly more about the growing joy than growing plants aspect. Today's episode is for people who have been growing food successfully, and now we're going to grow joy by creating delicious meals for ourselves with our garden harvests. And if you know a gardener who might like some of these recipes, go ahead and send this episode. Share this episode with your gardening friends so that they could dive into the delicious foods as well. I've eaten multiple recipes from Julia's book since we've spoken. And catch us on Instagram Live this week. Follow me at Growing Joy with Maria, because we're actually going to go live and make one of the cocktails from our conversation, which you're about to hear. So follow me on Instagram at Growing Joy with Maria for the live that Julie and I are going to do. We're going to go into our gardens live, harvest our cocktails to make a cocktail and a mocktail. It's going to be really fun. And you should grab your materials and make a delicious drink with us. So Julia is the founder of Lemon Stripes, which is a really popular book. She is married to Anel, who is Botanical Bosnian on social media. They're a husband and wife team who put together this really interesting cookbook about growing food and then cooking with it. So Julia's skills of cooking and Anel's skills of growing. You'll learn more about it, but I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. So let's dive right in. Julia, my Italian foodie friend, benvenuti al podcast, I guess. Welcome to Growing Joy.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, so excited to have you for a perfectly timed episode on, we've all gotten to that point in the middle of our gardening season where we're like, oh my God, what have I done? Why did I plant 8 tomato plants? Why do I have 3 cucumber plants? Like, what was I thinking? And then all of a sudden you have an embarrassment of riches. And it's a shame when our produce that we work so hard on goes to waste. So I'm so excited to have you here to help us spice up our dinners and lunches, so we're not all just having like BLTs with our homegrown tomatoes every day.
Yeah, I mean, you can only eat so much pesto with that basil, right? So that was kind of like the idea behind my book. I was like, we have this huge, giant garden with these harvests that my husband will bring in, like baskets full of tomatoes and herbs and cucumbers and whatever else. And I realized I just can't make the same stuff over and over. And I had to get creative. And I know there's a lot of other people out there who have the same issue.
Yeah. And we're really going to hone in on tomatoes, cucumbers, and herbs, because I feel like for so many of us, that's really where the embarrassment of riches happens, particularly with tomatoes. And you can only pickle so many cucumbers. Like I said, you can only make tomato sauce. And for me, it's bruschetta. You can only make so much pesto, even though I'll argue I could eat pesto with a spoon. So I feel like I could make a lot of pesto, but it's fun to try different things. So today's episode, I hope everybody walks away from this episode with one new recipe they haven't thought of, or one new like technique that they haven't thought of, and spices things up. Also, I'm very excited that I will be having one of your recipes for dinner tonight, as I was leafing through your cookbook recipe, but we'll save it for the end. We'll save it for the end.
With that, okay.
Yeah, with that hook. So before we dive into recipes for tomatoes, cucumbers, and herbs, you've built such a cool business. You and your husband are such a sweet little duo, the gardener and the chef. Like, how did you become the author of this cookbook and the garden chef kind of guru that you are now?
Honestly, I'm still asking myself that. But really what happened was that I started a blog. It's called Lemon Stripes. And I wrote this like food, fashion, lifestyle, motherhood blog for about 15 years. And that, of course, as social media grew, became more of an Instagram account in addition to the blog. And I was able to quit my full-time marketing job to do this as my living, which was incredible. But it got monotonous. You know what I mean? I didn't want to keep posting always for other brands. I wanted to do something for myself and something that really just brought joy and I felt very proud of. And I came up with the idea of this book after my husband planted this incredible garden during the pandemic. And we had, like you said, too many cucumbers, too many tomatoes, too many everything. So that's kind of how the idea for the book came about. My husband's story, I'll just really quickly give you because it's worth a listen, is that he grew up in Bosnia during the war there. And his family was not wealthy, but they were able to survive because they had a farm and a garden. They were able to grow their own food. They actually had food, whereas their neighbors didn't. They were able to trade their eggs, their milk, and things like that. So it was like a literal piece of his survival. So gardening to him is like incredibly, incredibly important and like deep within his childhood. So him creating this garden for our family, teaching our children how to keep going and paying it forward has been just the most beautiful experience.
Yeah, gardening is so emotional and such a way to connect to your ancestors. I've really felt that in my Italian heritage. Like, I feel like I connect with my grandma every time I go into my garden. And that's such a beautiful story. And I love that your book has a bunch of Bosnian recipes. I learned a lot about Bosnian food. I didn't know much about it. And I'm excited to try some of your Bosnian recipes in it.
Well, those are, I have to plug my mother-in-law who gave me those because I did not know them without her. And they're so good and just full of flavor and like so comforting and delicious. So definitely try those recipes.
Yeah. So what does your garden look like now? So your husband built this garden in the pandemic. I saw there's a photo of some chickens in your book. So what does your whole, I guess, homestead kind of look like now in Connecticut?
Yeah, we joke that we have a farm, but we don't have a full farm. We have a garden that's about 20 by 20 feet.
In ground?
And that it's raised beds.
Okay.
So we have, it looks like a horseshoe almost with beds around the outside and then herb beds in the middle of it. So it's quite large. Then there's like a trellis that you can walk through and open a door where we have grapes growing under the trellis, and then a berry patch. And the berry patch, we put a roof over because my husband always says he loves sharing with the birds, but they can't eat all of our berries. So the berries are completely covered in there, and that's about 6 by 10 maybe. So it's a little smaller. Then you go around the back and we have a chicken coop with 13 chickens, our girls, as we like to call them. They all have names like Miranda, Karen, Betty. So we have a bunch of chickens and we free range them every day and take, their waste at the end of the season, mulch it up and create like layers in our soil to keep it really fertilized and healthy. And it's been a really amazing, like self-sustaining project.
And how much property are you doing this on?
We have 1.5 acres.
Okay.
So
That's
it doesn't
amazing.
take up a lot. Yeah. We got very lucky with our property when we bought our home.
We have a great episode on the podcast for last year on small scale homesteading, and you can do a chicken garden self-sustaining situation on like 1/2 acre. It's crazy. So amazing.
We don't use most of the property for it. It could definitely be smaller. And next he wants to add bees to the mix.
Oh, amazing.
So
that would be so cool. It must be so amazing for your kids to grow up like that. What a
It
gift.
really is. It really is. They love it. Like my son, Luca, he's 3. He comes home from school. He's in daycare and he'll come home and just say, I want to go see the chickens. And he goes and lets them out. They know how to collect eggs. My daughter's best friend lives right next door and she has free range to come over and get whatever she wants. So we'll just see her run across the yard and like grab her eggs. It's the sweetest. I love it.
That's amazing. And so many berries. That also must be so fun for kids to have a berry patch to pick sweets from.
Oh, last year I think I ate like 2 berries total because they ate all of them. Yeah.
Incredible. So fun. Oh my gosh. Your goals, your future goals. We still rent, but that's definitely my goal with our family too. That's so beautiful. So has this process really only been since the pandemic for you guys?
Yeah. So we moved into this home right before the pandemic. So
Mhm.
we didn't really have any property before that. We came from the city and then moved to a house with a really small yard before this and knew we were going to move out of it. So we had like little indoor plants like
Mhm.
basil and whatnot. But this was our first like big space to have a garden. So it was very
Amazing.
exciting.
Well, without further ado, let's dive in to these recipes because I want to crush through a bunch of. The funny part is, I'm like, wow, I have like 20 recipes I want to talk to you about. But you have how many recipes do you have in the book? A million.
I have 108.
Yeah,
So I had
it's
to
a
have
lot.
100, but I'm into numerology and 108 is like a good luck number. So
Yeah,
there we are.
I love that. I love that. Okay, cool. So let's talk about tomatoes first. And the way I want to move through these different crops is let's talk about some basics on preserving first, and then we can get into recipes because I found it interesting. So with tomatoes, you're always going to have an abundance. My husband and I love to freeze tomatoes. We freeze them whole though, because
Oh.
we just find in the winter, it's so nice. We grow pretty much only cherry tomatoes as well. So they're easier to freeze, but we'll just put them in a Ziploc bag. And then my husband will take a straw and like suck the air out of the Ziploc bag, like so lame and old school. And then we'll freeze them on a baking sheet in the freezer. So like in one, thin layer. And then we just stack them up in the freezer. In the winter, it's so nice to have our homegrown tomatoes when you're where we live, the sun sets at 4 o'clock. So you're not feeling that like
Yep.
fresh, nutrient dense moment in the winter in the woods. But I love how you freeze and preserve your tomatoes. So how do you guys like to do it?
First of all, I love your idea. I'm copying you this year. I'm going to do that too.
Okay. Yeah, go
That's
for it.
great. Never thought to do that. So we do it a few different ways. One is I'll either literally just make them into tomato sauce and then
Mhm.
freeze that
Yeah.
because as an Italian girly, you
Yeah.
know how it works. We put tomato sauce on everything and I use
Everything.
that like all winter long. So that's
Mhm.
honestly my favorite way. The other thing you can do is kind of make a confit. So you just roast them
Mhm.
in olive oil and then you can can those. And then you can come out and put those, on top of chicken, on top of fish, on their own, whatever, on top of bruschetta, whatever you want. And
Mhm.
that's like a great way to keep the flavor in there too.
Yes, let's talk about your tomato confit because that was one of the ones I wanted to dive into because I think people think, okay, yeah, you can jar a sauce or you can freeze a tomato, but tomato confit is so fancy. Like if you bring it to a
Oh, yeah.
party, it's so luxurious, it's so delicious, but I don't think people think to turn their tomatoes into a tomato confit, which is an amazing way to preserve it as well. So can you walk us through how to make a tomato confit?
Sure. Also, I want to preface this by saying, even though it is fancy and luxurious, it could not
It's
be
the
easier
dumbest,
to do.
it's so simple.
Yeah.
Like a monkey could make
Yes.
it. It's the simplest thing. It's so
Literally.
funny. But if you show up to a party with it, or if you're entertaining and you have it as like some with your bread, you're going to be the fanciest, coolest person at the
Oh,
party.
yeah. People love it.
Yeah.
So basically, what you do, so I generally do it with the smaller tomatoes just because they're sweeter and I like the sweet taste, but you can do whatever you like. So you can cut them in half if you want. I leave them whole. You literally put them in a baking dish, smother them in olive oil. So they're like floating around in there, salt, pepper, and then full heads of garlic and just slow roast them.
And
That's
slow
it.
roast is that like 200
Oh,
in the
sorry.
oven Fahrenheit?
Yeah. So you do it
Okay.
on like 200 for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. And you can kind of decide how they look. If you want them to be blistered, if you want them to be a little less cooked, it's kind of up to your preference.
Mm-hmm.
I like them pretty cooked. Like I like that blistered look on them. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you can always broil them at the end too, if you want that, like as part of your aesthetic. And it's just so good and flavorful. You can always salt them more at the end too. And then a few other things about the confit is when you freeze them, you freeze them with the oil. So it
Mm-hmm.
looks like, when the olive oil freezes, it looks kind of gross, but it unfreezes really well.
Mm-hmm.
So just don't get freaked out by that olive oil look. You can also use that oil. It's like a very garlicky, tomato-y oil for anything, marinades, salad dressings, whatever you want. So it's nice to have the oil on hand too.
Yeah, my husband's a big garlic confit person. And last night picked my first entire salad from our garden last night.
Oh,
And
the
we had
best.
cucumbers, tomatoes, edible flowers, lettuce. Such a fun moment. He had made garlic confit for the lamb that we were eating. And I actually took the oil and made the salad dressing with it because it was like
Oh.
garlicky oil, delicious with some balsamic and honey. Oh my God.
The one thing I forgot about the confit is I also usually put herbs in there. So you can put whatever you want, but like oregano, thyme,
Rosemary.
basil, rosemary, whatever kind of flavors you're preferring, you can put in there.
So if you're a gardener, you might be worried about how the changing of the climate is going to affect your garden. There's a lot to be worried about, whether it's water use restrictions, extended heat waves, disastrous flooding, super weeds that are taking over your yards, or prolonged pest life cycles. There are going to be daunting challenges ahead for food growers around the world. But fear not, there is an entire book dedicated to this problem. It's called The Climate Change Resilient Vegetable Garden by author Kim Stoddart. You've heard about her. She came on for a whole episode on this topic on the podcast. But the book is filled with actionable tasks that reduce resource use, stabilize the garden's ecosystem, and offer regenerative solutions to the most challenging issues faced by gardeners. It would make an amazing gift or resource for yourself. Kim comes to the rescue with advice to help you to weather these storms with ease. Kim has created the how-to guide for avoiding climate-related disasters in your garden, where you'll learn to select the most adaptable fruits and vegetable crops, nurture biologically active soils, discover intensive planting techniques, recycle rainwater, enhance biodiversity, and so much more. Even longtime vegetable gardeners will face unexpected challenges in the years to come, so build resilience by grabbing The Climate Change Resilient Vegetable Garden by author Kim Stoddart. You can pick it up at your favorite local bookstore, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, or Amazon.com. That's The Climate Change Resilient Vegetable Garden by author Kim Stoddart. And also with preservation, this is something that we've recently started doing, and it's unbelievably amazing. We've gotten silicone ice cube trays. And so you could put like the tomato confit in these silicone ice cube trays, and then you only pop one cube out in the winter, throw it in the pan, and that's your flavored olive oil for the base of whatever sauce you make. Or if you're going to saute chicken or I don't know, whatever, or pasta, like that's the other thing that I love, those silicone ice cube things.
They're like the best thing for preserving. And if you haven't bought them yet, for anyone listening, you can get ones with tops on them, which is much better because then they actually last longer and they don't get like freezer burn on it. The pesto is great for that. If you want just like a little pesto, we put everything in those.
Yeah, garlic. We live in Rampland, so we have tons of ramps in the spring. So last year I overpicked ramps. It was acres of ramps. I was kind to Mother Earth. I didn't over harvest ramps, but I picked too much for myself. I think I had like a 5-gallon bucket of ramps. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? So I made a bunch of ramp butter. You could do this with a lot of herbs in the garden too. I made a bunch of ramp butter and then I froze it in little ice cubes to use throughout the winter. And then I also froze it in little logs that I would like gift to people. And it was so cute.
Okay, that is a smart idea. I love that.
Yeah.
Speaking of the butter, I know we're not going, this is a little out of order, but a great idea is I have a recipe for a butter board in here, which basically is it's basically a green goddess butter board at the end of the day. It's like all these different herbs, you mix it in with salt and the butter and then spread it out and dip in radishes and veggies and bread and whatnot. And it's like another one of those things you can bring to a dinner party that people are blown away by, but takes, less than 30 minutes to make.
Right. And costs like 30 cents, like how much does some butter cost? Yeah. I hope everyone understands what a butter board is. They went very viral last year or 2 years ago, but yes. And the beautiful thing with those types of things is like whatever you have in the garden that moment, you can put it on the butter board. It's like, there isn't a prescriptive recipe for like, you must have 3 ounces of rosemary to make this work. It's like whatever you got, throw it in, which is such a beautiful part of garden to table eating anyway. Okay. Do you know Justine Bakes? Do you follow her? Okay. She's one of my favorite food content creators. I was so excited that you have a tomato tart in your book because I learned about the tomato tart from her and it is like my absolute favorite way to eat tomatoes. Once again, if you're entertaining, it's such a fun way to entertain. So forget your BLTs, plant friends. Make yourself a tomato tart for lunch instead. Can you walk us through how to do it?
Yes, but I also have to tell you that the first time I tried to make a tomato tart, it was a complete disaster.
Oh no!
So I've learned tips along the way. Just it was the shape of it. So you can use whatever you want as the base, but if you're using like a phyllo dough or like a pastry dough, you just have to make sure you're plating it aesthetically within the pie dish or however you're making it. But that it was a blob basically, but it was the most delicious blob I've ever eaten. Right. So even if you mess up the aesthetics of the tomato tart, it's going to be delicious. So don't get afraid of it. So basically you're going to take like a pastry dough, put tomatoes and some olive oil. I will say my biggest tip for this is don't put too much olive oil. You want to like basically just brush it on. If you put too much olive oil, it gets very heavy and then the dough gets soggy. You don't want that. You can put olive oil, like drizzle at the end, but not too much on there. And it's literally just like salt, herbs, olive oil, tomatoes on top of the dough. So it's like a confit, basically same ingredients, and it could not be easier to make. And then it comes out beautifully. You can cut it. You could also, if you wanted to put some cheese on it, some Parmesan, you can add that in too, kind of like whatever your favorite Italian flavors are.
We only grow cherry tomatoes here because we don't have the patience for full heirloom tomatoes. But like you can make all sorts of patterns. If you cut the cherry tomatoes in half, and you make like patterns. It's so fun. You can make individual ones.
The tomatoes. Sorry, I meant that. You don't want them full because you want them to be very thin. So I even slice the cherry or grape tomatoes. And I like to do a mix of the big tomatoes and the cherry tomatoes, but like the yellow ones and the orange ones and the red, and make it like really beautiful. And then, garnish it with the basil leaves. Oh,
amazing. So or like if you're entertaining, you could make like a mini one for each person and that's their like dinner roll. I don't know.
Oh,
crazy.
So
now we're getting crazy.
With that. I love that idea.
Now we're getting crazy. If you have a dinner party and you do that, you have to invite me.
Or send us a picture at least.
Yes, for sure. Okay. My other favorite dish of the summer that I was so excited to see in your book, because I learned about it on TikTok, and then I always have to go back and find the TikTok and then like try and screenshot the, like rewatch the video 400 times to get the list. Yes. I'm like, thank God it's just in this book now. Cowboy caviar, which actually is kind of incredible because it includes so many different things in the garden. Like you could really do half of your cowboy caviar like right out of your garden. So
totally.
Why is it so addicting? I can't.
So cowboy caviar, for anyone who doesn't know, is basically went viral. I want to say last summer, maybe it must have been before that.
Last summer.
Yeah. So in the last year or two, cowboy caviar kind of went viral on TikTok and Instagram. And it's literally just kind of like a mishmash of tomatoes, onions, jalapenos, peppers, black beans. Yeah. Corn. Like corn. Yeah. Like it's kind of like the flavors of chili, but in a dip almost. Yeah. Right. It's like when you put it like that, but it's also very
refreshing.
Fresh.
Yeah. It's like crunchy and refreshing, and you eat it with like a scoops tortilla chip.
Yes, scoops. That's exactly right. Because it does fall off. It's a very chunky dip. So it's not like a salsa or a guacamole or something that you can it will stick to it. It falls around. So you have to eat it with the scoops. My son will sit there and eat it with a spoon.
Yeah.
Which is great. Too. Also, it's like super bright and zesty from lime juice. So, oh my God, it's so good. And it's so easy to make also. Every recipe that you have brought up is one that's very easy and a crowd pleaser for everybody.
Yeah. That's my vibe. I'm an easy, and also like in the summer, minimal heat. Like I don't want to turn my oven on. I don't have central air. So I don't want to turn my oven on. If I'm turning my oven on, I want it to be for a very short amount of time. And cowboy caviar. So can you just walk us through kind of what it is, how to make it, like a high level?
High level. Okay. So basically you're not cooking anything with cowboy caviar. What you're going to do is chop all your veggies. So you're going to have onions, you're going to have your tomatoes, your peppers, as much heat as you want. You can add jalapeno or not. If you don't like spice, you have corn.
Or candied jalapenos. That's my favorite.
Candied jalapenos make it even better. You can make it a little sweet with honey. And you kind of just like mix these things all together in a bowl and let it sit for a few hours so that the flavors really marinate. Basically, what you're going to do is take olive oil, vinegar, lime, garlic, honey, salt, and pepper. And it kind of makes it into like a yummy salad dressing, but it turns into a dip.
Tangy.
So
yeah.
Oh, it's so tangy, but it has a tiny bit of sweetness, and it just like mixes really well with all the veggies, and it's not soggy, right? Yeah. So it's nice and like bright and crunchy. And then you can add the avocados in at the end if you want that creaminess to it, which is so nice.
So good. So delicious. Also, you can keep it in jars. Like I'll make it for a party and then I'll keep I'll put a bunch in a mason jar and I'll sprinkle it on top of the salads that I eat. I'll eat it with a spoon. You could put it on pizzas. You could get crazy with it, but like you could put it over, you could spoon it over like whatever protein you're having for dinner that night. Like there's so many different, you could put it over hummus. Like it's just the greatest. It should be like a fridge staple all summer for everyone.
Totally agree. You can also, what we do a lot is put it over fish tacos.
Yum.
Highly recommend.
Yum. That would be so perfect. Oh my gosh. Oh
Yeah.
my God. I'm getting really hungry. Perfect segue, because also I loved that you had a fish. You really have lots of different vegetarian meat, like all sorts of different stuff. So what's the fish with tomatoes? People might think tomato sauce. They might think tomato sauce and chicken or a BLT. But what about this fish recipe that you have? It might be a fun way for people to spice things up.
So I'm glad you asked about this because we just got back from a week in Europe and this was the first thing I made. It was what I was craving because it's
Mm.
so clean and
Mm.
healthy and flavorful and everybody loves it. So to make the fish, you're going to get a lot of the Mediterranean flavors that we love from Italy, from Greece, from that region. And you'll take olives, you can do Kalamata olives, you can do Castelvetrano olives, whatever you love, capers, a lot of garlic, onion, and you take those all and mix them all together and then make this kind of like a sauce almost to put over the fish, but it's not chopped up. So you have like, you can see full halves of the olives, you can see the full capers. It's not like mixed or mashed. You put that over the salted olive oiled fish, bake it, and it is unbelievably delicious. It's bright, it's fresh, it's healthy, it's clean, and it like makes a great main course for a weeknight.
Yeah. And do you use cherry tomatoes or larger tomatoes?
I always use cherry tomatoes on that.
Yeah, because then
just
the
because
cherry
when you're
tomatoes
cooking
kind
them,
of explode and they make the sauce kind of creamier too.
exactly. And also, yeah, I feel like the larger tomatoes would just be too soggy, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So good.
I serve it with pesto too, which might be overkill, but like I put pesto on everything. So basil pesto on top of that is great.
Yeah. I'm curious about your pesto. So I feel like my husband has the greatest pesto recipe, but I was looking at your pesto recipe and you claim that you have the best pesto recipe. And I was looking at your pesto and I was like, I might have to try this because you use two different types of nuts. He only uses walnuts, but you use cashews and salted almonds.
No, not almonds. I use cashews and pine nuts.
Sorry, use salted cashews and pine nuts, right?
Correct.
And I was like, oh, I bet the salted cashews makes it real creamy and kind of sweet.
So I started making my pesto this way probably like 20 years ago. I went completely off dairy. I was like having stomach issues and went completely off dairy, and I love pesto. So I tried to make a dairy-free pesto recipe. Over the years, I've kind of like tweaked it. It has become like a thing where whenever I visit anyone in my family, they make me make them batches of it because it's so good. The salty cashews, like you said, make it a little bit sweet, but not like cloyingly or overpoweringly sweet. It's just a touch of sweetness. And then you don't have to use the cheese if you don't want to, but you can bring in Parmesan for that bite. It doesn't always need it because you have the lemon, which is like, you know, the acid, you have the cashews, and then you put the pine nuts, you can toast them if you want, but it is so good and so addictive. We live on it all summer.
Yeah. There's a reason I feel like, I mean, I wasn't going to bring up your pesto because I was like, everybody knows pesto. Like that's not a new idea, but there's a reason why everybody grows basil and makes pesto all summer long because it's amazing and it goes on everything. So anyway, that's our soapbox moment for pesto. Let's move on to cucumbers because I'm growing micro cucumbers, like little guys, basically like Persian cucumbers. And I'm already like, oh, wow, 3 plants was too many. I could have gone with 1 plant. Like I have a lot of cucumbers coming in, and you can only pickle so many cucumbers and you can only like chop up enough. Like I'm kind of getting tired of just plain salads, you know, where like you chop the cucumber up in it. So I love that you have a couple of different pickling recipes, but can we do a quick overview of pickling and then dive into a couple of your cucumber recipes? Because pickling is a great way to preserve your harvest throughout, you know, beyond your summer.
Sure. So even if you are making way too many pickles, everybody loves receiving them as gifts.
Yes,
so like if you have a huge plethora of cucumbers and have to pickle them, don't worry about that because everyone's going to want them. They make great gifts. You can even give them all the way through the holiday season.
Yes,
they last.
Totally.
So what I do with pickling is I keep it very, very simple. It's water, sugar, vinegar, period. Boil that and then put it in with your cucumbers and then whatever herbs you want. So like sometimes I do it with garlic. Sometimes I do it with garlic and dill. Sometimes I do it with jalapenos. So you know, you can put in whatever you want, the black peppercorns, the mustard seeds, whatever flavors you like in your pickles. I think it's so personal. Like I have a hard time talking about pickling because I think it's so personal to everyone's preferences. Like my son likes really sweet, like bread and butter pickles. So I do extra sugar in those. And I don't even put garlic in his. He doesn't like that.
Yeah. So everybody in your house has their own jar of pickles?
I mean, basically, yes. My kids have one they like. My husband likes the spicy and I like the really dilly. Like I love dill. So I just like stuff the dill in those jars.
Yeah, I'm a bread and butter pickle gal, and it drives me nuts how most of bread and butter pickles have such trash in them. Like if you buy them at the store, there's corn syrup, there's like weird stuff in those bread and butter pickles.
Yeah.
So that's one of my goals, is to like fine tune my bread and butter pickle game this summer so that I'm set for the rest of the year.
I think I have faith in you. You can do it. It's actually so easy to make the bread and butter pickles. Easier than anything else. It's literally just sugar, water, vinegar.
Yeah.
Pickles.
Boom.
I mean, sorry, cucumbers.
Yeah. And cucumbers.
Yeah.
You know what I saw on TikTok the other day too, is that you can harvest the mini cucumbers. Like if you have too many mini cucumber blossoms, when they still have the flower on them and they're like a little baby cucumber, you can harvest those as like garnishes for drinks or something like that. And I wanted to bring up the other thing of yours that I'm very excited to try. I don't think it will go with what the recipe I'm making from your book today. It's not the same vibe. But let's talk about a cucumber basil margarita, because I'm a margarita lady.
Yes.
So, and you can make this with tequila or without tequila mocktail. But I love this cucumber basil combination. So can you walk us through how to make that?
Yes, I just did this on a news show, and the newscaster was obsessed with it. It is so good, so easy, and so yummy. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to muddle. Actually, I should note that in the book, we found a few typos after it posted. It says it serves 4. Yeah, it serves 2.
Okay.
So
I've done that too. There are typos. There are typos in my book that will haunt me for the rest of my life.
Same. My editor keeps saying, "Oh, for the reprint." I'm like, but what about the people who bought it first?
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, it says serves 4, but it serves 2. So after you muddle the cucumber and the basil, you're going to add lime to it and make sure it's like really, really mushed up as much as you can get it, because you want to get the juice out of that cucumber. Add the lime juice. You're going to add the agave, and then you'll shake it up with tequila. I don't drink, so I've been doing 0 proof tequila. There's one called Ritual. That's a brand that I love.
I've heard of
if anyone's
brand.
interested.
Yeah.
It's great because it kind of has the bite of alcohol like in your throat, which is nice. So I've been using the Ritual tequila for this, and you just mix it all together and pour it over ice, garnish with a cucumber, maybe a little basil leaf, and you are good to go.
I would also just like pour a can of seltzer in that and just like drink that, right?
Totally.
Delicious.
You can also batch this cocktail. So I had a friend of mine threw a party when I first wrote the book, and I batched this cocktail for the party, some with alcohol and some without, and it came out great. So you can make it like on a larger scale too.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, cool. And that's great because then you can use up a bunch of cucumbers from your garden for it.
Yes, definitely. And you know what? Now that I think about it, you could probably, if you don't pour the tequila in it, you could probably freeze the mix
as ice cubes,
in the ice cube things, and then make individual margaritas later. Just pour the tequila in.
That's genius.
I think we've unlocked something.
Did we unlock like a business idea, like free, like drink ice cubes? I like this idea a lot.
Okay, don't publish that. Someone's going to steal it.
Yeah, we're cutting this out of the podcast so no one can get our good idea before we trademark it. Okay, this is the thing that I always order at the Chinese restaurant. So I'd love to chat about it. Your riff on hot and cold cucumber salad. Another thing that you can make and then keep in the fridge and just like add onto whatever you're eating. So good, so addictive.
So the hot and cold cucumber salad. This is my husband's #1 favorite recipe in the entire book.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mine is the caponata, if anyone's wondering. Okay. So hot and cold cucumber salad. It's not actually hot. The name is, a friend of mine actually named it. It's hot for spice and cold because it's cold and cucumber. So it's basically kind of a riff on like cucumber kimchi. Mm-hmm. So it has the flavors from kimchi, but it's not fermented, obviously, and it's with cucumbers instead of cabbage. So gochujang is a Korean chili paste, which is an amazing addition to have in your fridge just for a lot of recipes in general. It gives like a really great, strong, spicy umami flavor. So you use a little bit of that. And you can, if you don't like too much spice, you can take that down and you mix that with tamari and honey for the sweetness and sesame oil and garlic. And you mix that all together. You slice your cucumbers very, very thin so that they can really like soak up the flavor of this sauce. And then you mix it all together, keep it in a bowl, and then I refrigerate it for like an hour or 2, just so that it can really like soak up the flavors. Top it with the white sesame seeds, and it is a delicious side. Like you said, you can put it on pork, you can put it on fish, you could put it on chicken, you could really put it on any meal, but we just serve it like on the side of basically whatever we're eating. I make this every single week.
Wow.
Like we are addicts. Yeah. Cold cucumber salad. Addicts.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And when you have cucumber harvest on a weekly basis, like come August or, whenever you're overwhelmed, that's a great thing to just keep replenishing.
Yes, I will say it is probably better with Persian cucumbers or small ones because when you get the really big cucumbers with a lot of seeds,
Mm,
it ends up making it a little bit too mushy. So if you're going to make it with those large, huge, those huge cucumbers
yeah.
with like a ton of seeds, I would scoop the seeds out.
Yeah. Okay. Core it. Okay. Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. One of my favorite flavors in your book, but I haven't seen it with cucumbers because in my Italian heritage, we make this with white beans, is your marinated cucumbers in the book.
So this is not really a recipe, but like a snack and an homage to my grandfather. So
Yeah.
my Italian grandfather, I don't know where he got this idea or why he'd do it, but he grew up no AC, like hot in the summers with a garden. And his favorite snack every summer, he would take cucumbers, slice them again very, very thin,
Mm-hmm.
put red vinegar on them, salt, some super thinly sliced red onions, and then ice cubes.
Yeah.
Like in a bowl of ice cubes, refrigerate them, make them freezing cold, and then just snack on that all afternoon. I was nervous to put this in there because it's not really a recipe. It's kind of just like a snack. And it's also a little bit weird, but once you try it once, you're going to be sold.
Well, and that's the purpose of cookbooks and an episode like this. It's like we want the weird random thing that we haven't tried yet. And also, I'm Italian and I grew up with that flavor, but with white beans. So we always at the dinner table had a can of white beans with red vinegar, thinly sliced red onions, salt and pepper. Like, I don't know what it is about Italians that just like that flavor. And we would always keep it in the fridge and it was always something we ate. And I was like, oh my God, with cucumbers, this is such a cool idea.
That's funny. See, my family didn't do it with white beans, but now I want to do that too.
Yeah. Oh, the white beans, like the vinegar breaks the beans down. So they get like really creamy. It's delicious.
Okay.
It's my husband's.
I'm trying that tonight.
Yeah. Try that tonight. You'll love it.
Okay.
And also, this is interesting to hear from you because my mom and grandparents also cutting thin is such a thing. Like the way Americans cut cheese drives my mom insane. Like you're supposed to cut cheese very thin and salami. Like you have to cut cheese and salami very thin because the thinner it is, the actually more taste you get. And Americans will make like a meat and cheese board with like half a centimeter thick pieces of cheese and salami. And my mom will like lose her mind. So I guess that must be an Italian thing or maybe a Mediterranean thing. But also I just feel like hot tip with whatever you're cooking or eating is like cut it thin.
Yeah. And cut it small. Like we chop our lettuce for salad so small. It's so much easier to eat.
Yes.
And it is a Mediterranean thing because my husband's Bosnian and they do the same thing. Like he gets so frustrated. He will sit there and like painstakingly slice, right? Like, and I just imagine, I don't know if you picture your grandparents doing this. My grandfather used to sit with the tomatoes and the cucumbers and just slice. And he was so meticulous. And
like in meditation almost. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think too, there's a reverence for food. That's a very reverent way of handling food that I kind of love and respect. And it's a nice tradition to carry on, through your lineage. Okay. So what I'm having for dinner tonight is your vegetarian rainbow rolls with peanut sauce, but I'm adding, so I love an H Mart. I don't know if everybody knows what an H Mart is, but it's a Korean grocery store and they make marinated bulgogi beef that we buy and then we freeze it. And then we like have it and thaw it and eat it. So I'm going to thaw and cook up the bulgogi beef. And then I'm going to make your rainbow rolls. And I don't know if I'm going to put the beef in the roll or if I'm just going to have the rolls and then the beef on the side.
That sounds delightful.
Isn't that going to be so good?
I am so jealous of your dinner. I want that now. And I want the bulgogi beef.
I know. H Mart, shout out. We love you. And that's another thing about your cookbook that I love is like I was reading through it and I'm home alone tonight. And so I was like, oh, this is my excuse. I'm going to go out, get takeout, pick up takeout. I'm not going to cook whatever. And then as I was reading through your cookbook this morning, I was like, wait, no, I'm going to make this. I have all the ingredients. I have everything in my garden. Like I'm making this instead. Because sometimes as gardeners,
brings me joy.
Sometimes as gardeners, like we forget how much produce we actually have available at our fingertips.
Yeah. And it's so easy to go out and order something, but then that's why I love this book too. Cause you can be like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what to eat tonight, but I have all these cucumbers. You can flip to the cucumber chapter and just say, oh, here's 10 options.
Yeah.
And and most likely you're going to have most of the ingredients from this book in your pantry. It's not like a fussy book. All the recipes are very easy to make.
Yeah. I could have made like 4 different things from your book today. So tell me about it. Tell me about these vegetarian rolls. And tell me, what is your trick with the rice paper wraps? Because I feel like I haven't mastered them yet.
Okay. The rice paper wraps are actually very difficult, which led to another recipe in this book. So when I first started trying to make any kind of spring roll, I could not figure out the rice paper wraps. So one time I was making them and I had all the stuff chopped up and it was just this big pile. And I was like, wait, this is a delicious salad. Let me just pour the peanut sauce over it. So I have a deconstructed spring roll salad too, which if you don't want to deal with the rice paper wraps, you can use that as well. So they are difficult. You basically have to get them very, very wet and then very quickly work. You have to work it very quickly. And it is also one of those things like practice makes perfect. I'm currently learning how to French braid my daughter's hair. You can't really teach it. You just have to keep trying it. So the wetter they are, the easier they are to work with, the more pliable. The rice paper is very, very thin. So they also can break. They also can fold on each other. Then they get stuck like that. So think of it like a burrito.
Yeah.
A wet burrito. And then just go as quickly as you can and just keep practicing. That's my only tricks I have for you.
So what goes into the burrito? Tell us about I've just talked about them for 5 minutes and we haven't introduced them at all. So what is your vegetarian rainbow roll and how does one make it?
So the reason it's called rainbow roll is because it's a rainbow of colors. So you could really use whatever vegetables you want, but we often have a lot of peppers, cucumbers, cabbage, the cabbage for the purple, the peppers for red, the cucumbers for green. I also love to put fresh herbs in these rolls. So you could use cilantro, you can use mint, you can use basil, you can use literally any herb you want and any mix of herbs that you want. And that's kind of what makes it nice and fresh and crunchy, right? Like you use a lot of these crunchy vegetables and with the herb flavor, it's just so fresh and yummy in the summer. So you take all these veggies. If you want to make it very aesthetic, you can put them in rainbow order, which is kind of fun. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
And then you wrap it up in this like little rice paper burrito. And what you want to do is you want to make sure it's really, really tight because there's so many veggies in it. And because they're not super thinly sliced, they are going to kind of fall apart if you don't wrap it really, really tight.
And the reason why I'm making these rolls is because I want to dunk them in the sauce because the peanut sauce is where it's at. So can you walk us through the peanut sauce?
Yeah, so I am kind of like a peanut sauce freak. It's one of those things, the hot and cold cucumber salad that I make once a week and keep in my fridge, and I put it on everything. So if you can't have peanuts, you can do any of these with almond butter, by the way, any of my peanut sauces, which is a great option. But I do peanut butter, tamari, ginger, and hot tip for ginger is that I buy the jarred ginger because I use so much of it every week and just take little scoops of that. It's like jarred fresh ginger. Or you can buy the like little frozen cubes of ginger at Trader Joe's. So if you don't want to like scrape off all the skin, that's a great tip. So tamari, peanut butter, ginger, sesame oil, garlic, fresh garlic pressed because you want it really small. And if you want, you can add a little bit of mirin, which is like a Japanese cooking wine to make it a little bit sweeter. And then you're going to put honey in it. Mix that all up. I like it a little bit thicker. Some people in my house, not to mention any names, my husband likes it thinner. So for him, you have to put in some water. So for peanut sauces, you're always going to start with a tablespoon of water and keep adding until it's like the consistency that you want. But you're going to blend those all together until it's perfect flavor, whatever flavors you like more of. If you want it sweeter, add more honey. If you want more salt, you add more tamari, etc.
I'm just imagining your refrigerator and it's like divided in 4 and it's like your husband's set of pickles and peanut sauce and then it's your set of pickles and peanut sauce and then it's your kids' set of like everybody gets their own riff. I love it.
I really wish I were that organized.
Yeah, I love it so much. Okay, and then herbs. We all get to the point where we're like, oh my God, this herb is about to bolt if I don't harvest it, but I have nothing to do with this herb. Oh boy, oh boy. So I love an herb salt, especially for the fact that you can have it well throughout into the winter. So can you talk to us about herb salt? Also a great gift.
Herb salt makes a great gift. And herb salt is essentially exactly what you're saying. It's you mix salt with herbs and then it's something that you can season your food with. So if you go to the store and buy like a rub for your chicken, essentially it's herb salt, right? Herbs and salt. So what we do is we dry the herbs and we'll take in like a huge harvest of parsley, basil, whatever it is, take the leaves off, put them in the oven. Again, so we're going to slow roast these. So these are going to be lower. We usually do it around 180 to 200 and we'll bake those and dry them out for about 2 hours, 3 hours, kind of depending on how it is. You want to kind of touch the herbs to see if they're dry. So once they're like crinkling in your finger, that's when you know they're done. That also makes the house smell amazing. Then you kind of take it out, crush it up with your hands or however we do it with our hands. I'm sure there's other ways to crush up herbs, crush it up and then put it into the little spice jars, which you can buy on Amazon for like 50 cents a jar. Put that in with sea salt. You can also just do the herbs plain, which is great. So we often have a ton of parsley for whatever reason, and we will dry the parsley and just use that.
Right.
like as
And save
parsley in our
yourself
cooking.
$7 to get the organic parsley at Whole Foods.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally. And that's the only dried parsley I use now. The other great thing with herbs, I know you didn't ask this, but we do a lot of teas. So we'll make with our mint.
That was going to be my next
Good.
question. Because that is a joy that I have only started reveling in last summer. I did not understand how easy it is to make teas. I'm also dabbling in herbalism. So learning all of the different benefits of the teas, but like tea is so easy to make. And
you literally stick it in the oven, dry it out, and that's it.
Yeah. And you could turn any herb into a tea, really.
You can also mix them. We do a mint chamomile that we'll like make after dinner. Makes
delicious.
Also a delightful little iced tea. Also, back to our dinner party thing, serving iced mint tea that you make in your own garden. Can I tell you how much people love that?
Such a flex.
Such a flex. Yes.
And then once you have honey, once you have bees and then you get to sweeten it with your own honey, that's going to be almost too much.
Next level.
I'll
just drop dead. Yeah.
Yeah. Fun fact for anyone who bakes or has a partner who bakes, I have found my husband's proofer, because my husband has this my husband's a huge baker and he has a proofer, like a collapsible proofer. Mm-hmm. It's basically a dehydrator. So I've used his proofer to dehydrate all of my herbs, which has been a fun other use for this random enormous thing that we have in our kitchen. So
that is amazing. But I also want to make sure that people know that, like, I get asked a lot if you have to have a dehydrator for these herbs. And it was great. We don't have one. It would be great to have one, but you just need an oven.
No, just a low heat oven. I also have made tea just by plucking, like, I haven't dried it. Like, I've just plucked spearmint out of my garden and boiled it and made that my tea.
Yeah, that's like another whole vibe. And you can do that fresh, but it's nice to have it like throughout the year too, right?
And then you could even like, oh my God, you could get fancy little tea bags and then you could put your tea in the tea bags and you could make like a cute little tag. And then that could be like your Christmas gifts for people. Ooh, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll do that.
Okay. I love it. We actually have a logo for our garden, which is so embarrassing. Yeah. So my husband has an Instagram called Botanical Bosnian. So we had a logo made of our garden with chickens in front of it that says Botanical Bosnian. We like stamp all of our egg cartons with it. So I feel like I want to put that on the tea.
You need to make little tea tags.
Obviously.
For Botanical Bosnian. I love that.
This is now my only priority for summer. I love that.
You like wish you never met me. I'm like, you're pivoting your whole business. You're going into dinner parties and teas.
Packaged teas for all.
I love it. Oh my God, that's so funny. Okay. Now, tea and herb salt were two of the things that I'm like, if you have extra herbs, guys, go make yourself some teas and herb salt. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, now this technically isn't in your herb section, it's in a different section, but shrubs, because I feel like shrubs are very in right now with like drinking vinegars and shrubs. And, you know, I've seen like a rosemary shrub or a basil shrub. So could you make a shrub with a herb?
You could make a shrub with literally anything.
Yeah. What is a shrub and how do you make it? And how would we make it with some herbs?
Okay. So I generally do it with berries, but a shrub is kind of like, it has a similar flavor to a kombucha if you've ever had that. So it's like almost like a vinegary drink. You're going to mix it with something though. You're not going to drink the shrub on its own. Mm-hmm. So you're going to take like I've never done it with herbs, but what I do with the berries is I take the berries, whatever extra berries we have, you boil those with vinegar and it makes this like really vinegary, like flavorful. I can't even explain the flavor. Like, have you ever had it? How do you explain
tangy. Yeah. It's like delicious and tangy. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's essentially it. And sugar.
Yeah.
It's so easy. Couldn't be easier. And it's also very cool to mix with like a seltzer or put it into a cocktail and like a fun thing to like have as like an added flavor that just like brings a different mix to the game.
Yeah. Like what are the purposes of shrubs? So drinking, cocktails and mocktails too, because it's kind of tangy. So I could also see it replacing the alcohol for a mocktail because it's like so tangy. How do you use shrubs? Do you eat shrubs? Like, do you put it on?
No, okay. It's for drinking only. Okay. So what I generally do with it is I'll have a shrub like always in my fridge just because we have so many berries and I'll just mix it with like a little bit of seltzer, like for an afternoon snack. Like it's not the whole snack obviously, but with my afternoon snack and it's just like a nice little refreshing pick me up.
Yeah, because that tang is a really nice pick-me-up. So I was thinking...
It is kind of like an acquired taste though, right? Yeah. Like you have to like vinegar. It's a little bit weird. It's a little bit funky, but it's really good once you get into it.
Remember that trend going around on TikTok last year where you put balsamic vinegar in seltzer and it was supposed to taste like Coke? I was kind of into it. It's not like I'm still drinking it, but I do like that tangy flavor. anything to encourage me to drink water that like doesn't just taste like water. So yeah, I'm into this. Another shrubs also reminds me of like simple syrups for herbs too. Like last year I made a sage simple syrup with so much leftover sage that I had, and that made amazing cocktails and mocktails.
What did you put in? What did you put in the cocktails besides the syrup?
Well, I made a lot of mocktails with it. So I'd pour it just like with seltzer and some citrus, or let's see, what would my husband make with it? Sage. Oh, we did like gin and tonics with it. Or you could also make like warmer, I don't think it was a tequila moment, but you could do like a mint simple syrup with tequila. Or
you could do a cilantro. You could do something fun with like a tequila and cilantro simple syrup. That would be fun.
Maybe that's part of our business with the ice cubes, with the pre-made ice cube cocktails. You could get pre-made simple syrups.
Listen, there's something here. I'm telling you.
We're on to something.
I feel like the only herb I wouldn't maybe do simple syrup with would be dill, although I'm a dill freak.
Or parsley.
Oh yeah, parsley would be great.
I feel like parsley wouldn't be it. And I think dill, you're right, like also not great. But for these people who like these pickle drinks, pickle cocktails are very in. So like a dill simple syrup, actually, if you're a pickle girl and you want these weird pickle cocktails everybody's making, which is not for me, that could be interesting.
Can someone do that and report back? Because I'm interested in it.
But I don't want to do it. Back. Yeah, it's not me. Okay, so we've gone over so many different recipes, and this is not even a tenth of your book. Like there's so much more in your book. And for gardeners, it's so fun because it is a cookbook for gardeners for your harvest. So tell us more about where people can come find you, where people can come find your book and keep growing along with you. And also follow your sweet husband, the Botanical Bosnian.
Okay. So you can follow me on Instagram. My hashtag is @lemonstripes with an S at the end of that. And there I have links for everything, my blog, all that kind of stuff. I'm at lemonstripes.com. For my book, it's called Garden Grown. You can buy it on Amazon, bookshop.org, anywhere books are sold. And my husband's Instagram is @Botanical Bosnian. He does a lot of gardening tips and he is very good at it.
Yeah. For my gardening audience, I bet they would really like him.
Yeah. And he's funny. He makes it fun.
And you're funny and you're fun. And it's been so fun chatting with you. Thank you so much for coming on. And maybe we'll have you back for a future episode on a different set of garden harvests.
Ooh, love that. Yeah, we could do peppers and eggplant.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Okay, plant friends, that was such a fun conversation. Let me know if I should have Julia back on or maybe another guest back on to do maybe an episode on zucchini, maybe an episode on, I don't know, what are the other things that you have in abundance in your garden? DM me. Let me know at Growing Joy with Maria. So go buy Garden Grown. That's the name of their book. It's called Garden Grown. And you can follow Lemon Stripes and Botanical Bosnian on social media. We'll link to everything, obviously, in the show notes. But I really enjoyed this podcast. She was really fun to talk to. We had never met before, and I felt like we definitely had a quick soulmate connection. So we're going to go live and make a cocktail together. And if you guys like that, maybe we'll go live like once a month and make stuff from her book together from our gardens. Let me know. And if you like this podcast, share it with your plant friend. Share it with your friend that has so many tomatoes they don't know what to do. I hope this episode helps them and helps you keep growing joy. Plant friend, thank you for tuning in today. It means so much to me that I get to be part of your planty journey. If you like what you heard, make sure you're subscribed to the show so you never miss an episode. We have so many incredible interviews and solo episodes on incredible houseplant and gardening topics that you will not want to miss this year. And while you're over there in the podcast player subscribing, why don't you click over to the review section of Growing Joy with Plants and leave us a review. Reviews are tremendously helpful for the growth of the podcast, so thanks in advance. If you're looking for more opportunities to grow as a plant parent with Growing Joy content, we've got so many options for you. First, I highly recommend you taking the Plant Parent Personality Test. It's free, it's super fun, it takes 3 minutes to complete. At the end of the test, you're going to get your plant parent personality profile and a curated list of plants, projects, and podcast episodes that are right up your alley, tailored just for you and your lifestyle, inspired by your results. The links are in the show notes. If you're looking to uplevel your plant parent game, I have so many free downloads on my website that I think could help you, like the Understanding Natural Light download or 9 different ways to green up your office space. If you'd like to support the show monetarily and help me bring the show to as many people as possible for free, you can head to our Patreon link in the show notes to learn more about our offerings. And finally, I invite you to come hang out with me and continue the planty conversation on social media on Instagram and TikTok. I'm Growing Joy with Maria. My DMs are always open if you have requests for topics or ideas for the show. Thank you again for listening. It is truly my honor and delight to help you keep blooming and keep growing joy.